Hey guys, I want to get ready with me and then just give you an update. So this is all sideways because I didn't bring my tripod with me. Walker's been in the hospital still. This is going on 3 weeks. We thought he was going to get ready to come home. I left last week to come home because I had doctor's appointments this week, and it has been a trip. I'm sorry this is like mumbo jumbo, but my brain is just not thinking because this week, yesterday, from Thursday to now, was just horrific. And I'm trying to think where I need to look for the camera and try to get ready. So, to my new followers, my husband has been in heart failure since 2019. There are videos on that where he's been in and out of the hospital. From last September of 2025, this is 26, he had knee surgery. They've messed up on some things, gave him double, and there's videos on that, I think. But anyway, since his knee surgery, he has been in and out of the hospital every month. From January on, it's been really, really bad. He's been waiting. They found a tumor on his bladder in February. And they're like, we need to get this taken care of very quickly. So I'm like, well, can I wait for spring break? And they're like, no, because he really needs this taken out. So we had Alex and them ready, to go with them to take it out, because I was running out of time where I'd had my surgery and stuff. So we got everything in place. He ended up in the hospital with his heart failure, filled up with fluid. They couldn't do it. That was February. Then end of February, he was back in there. Then March, he was in there. Then April, he was in there. Couldn't do the surgery. I'd already passed my spring break. I'm thinking, I thought this was supposed to be done, because when he got out the first time in March, I'm like, hey, he's out. Okay, well, we got to wait, make sure he's okay. I'm like, he's out. Let's do it. I thought you said it was very important when I asked you to wait. Now he's out. Now you're not waiting. Now you're not doing it. So I'm like, nothing was making sense to me. I'm just like, he's out. So I'm like, oh, whatever. But he was fine. He was not having any symptoms of any cancer. They had thought there was a big tumor. So I was looking up everything for bladder cancer and stuff. He had no blood in his urine, no excessive weight loss that he's already, other than his, when they was getting the fluid off and stuff. So he had no sign. So we weren't worried. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, back in September, where he did bleed out after his knee surgery, I was thinking, okay, there was young doctors there and they didn't read the chart, and so they filled him full of fluid. And I got on to him and I'm like, you do realize he's a heart failure patient and you're not supposed to give him that much fluid. And then they went and put a catheter in him because his kidneys weren't emptying. And I'm thinking, so I was thinking, you guys just read his chart. So they panicked and they shoved the catheter in him, and that's when they did some damage to his bladder. So in my head, I'm thinking that that's scar tissue. And of course, on a CT scan, you can't tell scar tissue from a tumor. So I wasn't worried. And I told Dakota, so we were not worried at all. We just really thought that that's what it was. So, to ease my husband's mind, that's what I told him, because I love him, but if you tell him he's got something, he's the worst hypochondriac ever. It's so funny. And I told him one day, I said, you have hypochondriacism. He goes, what are the symptoms for that? Because I think I might have it. And Dakota and I cracked up. So when it finally come to him having surgery out of the blue, in May, the day after Memorial Day. They called us on that Friday. They said, well, you're scheduled for surgery Tuesday. I am like, what? So thank goodness Alex was going to take him, but Alex got called out for a job interview. So Dakota ended up taking off work, and she took him. So he had his surgery. Everything went well. They put the catheter in. There was no tumor. It was scar tissue. So they scraped it out and everything. He was supposed to wear the catheter. We was going to have the second surgery to remove the catheter on June 6th, on that Saturday. And then they're going to put a stent in his bladder, his urt or something. So his bladder will empty all the way. And then they was going to work on the prostate. I didn't get all the information from the doctor because Dakota had it and stuff. So I had to read the paperwork. So I'm like, okay. So then he comes home. And so on that Monday, like that was on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, on Monday, June 1st, he's like, I'm not feeling really well. I need to go to the doctor. He ended up going to the doctor, and Clarksburg was his appointment, and he ended up in the hospital, and he was very, very sick, full with fluid. They just shipped him to Pittsburgh. So they took him to Pittsburgh, and that's where he's been since then. So when he got here to Pittsburgh, I was still in school, and they were just running some tests on him. And one of the tests that they found out when they were doing some, said first they needed to remove some of the fluid, and then one of the heart doctors called me, and she said, we're going to do a heart cath on him. And I said, why? He just had one 2 weeks ago. Why do you guys want to keep putting him under? I'm like, this is ridiculous. You already know what he's got. You already, you know that he's had a blockage and it's not there. And she's like, ma'am, she goes, I am a doctor from a congestive heart failure team. I'm not from the, I'm looking for something different. She's like, a cardiologist is going to look for blockages, what's causing the problem. I'm going to be looking for fluid inside the heart to see. I have a feeling that his heart is holding fluid in somewhere inside the heart. That's why when we send him home, he fills up with fluid so fast, and we can figure it out. And I'm like, I never even heard of that. So I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry for being so abrupt. I'm just trying to watch out for my husband. And she's like, no, it's okay. She goes, we get it. She goes, you guys have been put through a lot. We get it. So they did the heart cath. And guess what? His heart had over 10 pounds of fluid inside there. So they come back and they're like, well, we got to get that fluid out of that heart. It's holding down in there. That one valve is pumps, but it can't pump the fluid out. But when it gets full, it can pump it out. Then it just holds down in that little vessel or whatever, that little curve. So they said, we're going to put him on the drip, a slow drip, because we don't want to hurt the kidneys. I'm like, yeah, I know that. So they did that. They're getting the fluid off. And so they've done that. I was here last week. He looked really good. I thought I was going to bring him home when I left, but they're like, well, we wanted a little bit more fluid to come off. And maybe he can come home by next weekend, which is this weekend here. And I said, okay. So I'm thinking maybe Friday, today. So I had a doctor's appointment is the only reason why I left, because I needed to go see my cardiologist. So I started having my PVC started acting up again. I was just, which they knew they would, but that's a different story, and we'll get to that later on, but I'm okay. So I went to my cardiologist appointment. And when I got home, that day that I left, I got home, I called him. I said, hey, babe, I made it home. I said, when he answered the phone, I said, what's the matter? You sound really weird. I said, what's wrong? And he said, oh, well, I went to go take a shower and I passed out. I said, babe, why didn't you do that when I was there? You know, I said, was you feeling bad when I was there? And he said, no, I felt fine. He said, my blood pressure dropped. He said, they took me off of the drip and they think that's what it was. And then his potassium was low and his magnesium was low. So that's what they thought it was. So they took him off that and they went ahead and started giving him they gave him a small bag of fluid because they can't give him fluids and because they'll fill him right back up with fluid. So they gave him a small bag of fluid, took him off of the drip, and then on Tuesday they on Wednesday Tuesday night, they started him on a oral medication of the Lasix or the another word anyway, it was a new water pill. So he took that. And Wednesday night, I called him. He was supposed to leave on Thursday to come home. So we were like, yes. Wednesday night, I called him. And he said, he goes, when I get home, he said, I'm going to go to the doctor. I said, why are you going to go to the doctor when you get home? And he said, well, I'm starting to shake again like I did when I was in Parkersburg when they filled me full of all that fluid. I said, well, how much fluid did they give you? And he said, only a half a bag. And he goes, I'm just not feeling right. And he said, I can't hold my phone. I can't hold the fork or anything when I eat. And he goes, my hands are shaky. And then he started talking really weird. And I said, babe, I said, if I bring you home, I said, they're going to run all these tests on you here. I said, no. I said, you need to put your light on, put the phone down, leave me on the phone, put your light on, and call the nurse right now. So he did. He put his light on, and he called for the nurse, and she come in there, and he goes, I feel really weird. And so I put my phone on mute, and he put his phone down so I could hear everything. So the doctor coming running in there, and they're like, he wasn't making any sense. And he goes, I felt like this morning, but it wasn't really bad. And the doctor said, I'm going to yell at you for 1 minute. Why didn't you tell us this morning that you were feeling bad when I had a whole crew of people where we could get you taken care of? And now you're laying here like this. And he said, there's minimal staff here. And he's like, we could have handled this where maybe you're not as bad off as you are. He's like, that's all I'm going to say. So they took him down and did a CT scan. And they brought him back up and stuff. So they took care of him on Wednesday night. On Thursday morning, I tried to call him and I couldn't get an answer. And then he called me back and he's like, they're going to try to do an MRI on me today. And he's like, what are you doing? Are you coming up here? I didn't tell him on Thursday what had happened. Wednesday night, we had this horrific storm all over the town where I live at. And there were multiple flash flooding. And guess what? My basement was full of water. And so Dakota come over, like I cried that morning. So I'm standing in water that's covering my feet. So I go and get a shop vac. And I said, I'll be there as soon as I can. I got some stuff I got to take care of. I just didn't want him worried about it. So in the midst of us taking all this water out, little did I know that he was getting worse every second at the hospital. And by that late afternoon, we were almost done, and I'm covered in mud, and I'm covered in, so I got my laundry, we got all the water out 5 hours later, and I'm filthy, and I go upstairs, and I got the dehumidifier on. Our furnace has a dehumidifier on, so I turn everything on. I got my hot water tank working, thank God, nothing was blew up or anything. I got the hot water tank working and the furnace was working and stuff. So even with the air on, the dehumidifier down there kicks on. So it was on. The doctor calls and he is like, Miss Walker, he goes, are you anywhere close? And I'm like, no. And he's like, your husband is very, very critical. He said, we're getting ready to move him to ICU. And you could not even understand a word that he said. He goes, the CT scan showed that he didn't have a stroke. He goes, but he's had stents put in for his leg, and he's had a cardiac loop, and he said, I need to get the records and stuff for that. He goes, but I don't know if we can do an MRI on him, and that's going to show us exactly in the brain if he did. He said, but he's also got sepsis. And he goes, I started him on some strong antibiotic, and he goes, I hope that I got it caught in time. And he goes, but he's very, very, very sick. And he goes, ICU is going to be able to take care of him. He's going to have a one-on-one nurse. And I said, I'm coming in the morning. I said, there's no way that I can make it this evening. I said, I don't want him knowing. And I told him what was going on. And he goes, I'm going to call you every time something is going on. And I just asked him, I said, is he going to make it through the night? I said, I will just leave and come as is and just fine. And he goes, he's very critical. He said, I don't think that he's going to die this evening. He goes, only God knows that. He goes, but he's really, really, really sick. And he goes, I've seen patients sicker than this. He goes, sepsis can kill you. He goes, but I really think that I caught it in time. He goes, I'm more worried about the hidden benefits if I can't, or the hidden, not the hidden benefits, but the hidden diagnosis or the hidden problems by not being able to do the MRI. And I want to see about the records. And I said, well, Dr. Nolte did his surgery in Clarksburg for the arteriogram and the graft in his leg. And I said, Dr. Nagy. And he's like, okay. He said, that helps me. And he said, I'll keep you informed and stuff. And I said, okay. And he said, we're going to move him to ICU. Well, I had the biggest cry fest that I could have. And I cried and cried. And I got my laundry in the wash. And I started getting my bags packed and stuff. And I started preparing people to come over for the dogs because Dakota was going to come with me and stuff. And then I called all my kids and everything. And, you know, we were just preparing, not that we were preparing for the worst, but I was trying to prepare them for the worst because we didn't know. And so he made it through the night, and I left yesterday, and I got up here yesterday. His fever was 103 on Thursday night, and the doctor called about 10:30. And they were able to find all of the records, and they were able to go ahead and do an MRI. He did not have a stroke, which is good. He had, his brain was clear and all that. He's just so full of that sepsis that it's just causing him lots of problems. So I got to go in and see him. When I saw him, oh my gosh. He looks so frail, and he was laying there asleep, so I didn't wake him at first. And then he opened up his eyes and he saw me, and I went over and hugged him and stuff. And he's just shaking, and he can't lift his arms; they fall down. And it's sad to see him like this, but when I walked in the room, I looked up, and on his mirror there's this little ledge, and I saw this little tiny Jesus, and I was like, that's my sign. He's going to be okay. It's just going to take him a while to pull through this. I don't know what's going to happen next. The doctor, I'm getting ready to go over there. I get to go in at 10. He's going to be in ICU for a few more days until he gets stable enough. His blood pressure's low. But I fed him half of his dinner. last night. He's not as hungry. I tried to make him use his hands, and I'm trying to keep him cognitively, you know. He was asking multiple questions and just really weird, you know, weird things. So, it was just like, it was hard for me to comprehend what he was saying to me, but I was like, who am I? And he knew who I was, and I asked him how many kids we had, and he was functioning. And then he was trying to feed himself and he was shaking, but then the TV went off, and I was like, I don't know how to use this. He was telling me how to use the TV. His arm would go up and he could feed himself. So I was like, oh, if I got his arm off of his shaking. So I said, hey, you tell me how to use the TV and feed yourself too. Then if I got him concentrated on something else, his arm was working okay. So he's going to need some therapy and stuff. I can't wait to get over to see how he did through the night. And everybody's super nice over there. The kids are on their way up today. They're going to see him today. He doesn't know that. I already talked to all the nurses. They're bringing the baby up to see him. Garrett and Hannah's coming up, and Alex and Dakota's coming up, and everybody's allowed to be in the room with him. So they're all on their way up now, but it's a big surprise for him. So we're hoping that will boost his confidence, or give him, you know, something else to keep fighting for. Like, he's a fighter, but I know his body's getting tired, and it's hard to watch him, you know, go through this. And people tell me that I'm strong, and I'm not strong. It's hard for me to watch my husband go through this and stuff, and I'm here for my kids, and I've cried all I could cry, and I'm sure I'll cry some more, but I just have to keep pushing through. It's going to be a change, but we're just going to take one day at a time. I'm here for a few days until he gets out of ICU, and I have a couple more appointments that I need to get to by the end of the month, and so I'll be leaving again because I gotta head back to my cardiologist, and then I gotta head to Columbus. So hopefully by then he'll be home, or at least he'll be closer to home, and then to a rehab center, because he's going to need therapy. I thought about getting him home and home health, but home health's only going to be there twice a week, so he needs a facility to get him up out of bed or something first, and then, you know, because there's just no way he can get up right now on his own and stuff. So that's what's been happening. Let me get off of here so I can get dressed and finish getting ready. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. I know some of you have seen my post, some of you has commented, and thank you guys, but I do have another video sometime next week that I did with Hadley and I. We went and got a mani-pedi before everything went AWOL, so it's not like that just happened. So when you see that, that's a video that was already up. And so I'm going to try to post videos that I already have. So when you see it, it's not, you know, I'll keep giving updates when I can and everything on how he's doing. But that's what's going on right now in my life. So if I don't get any videos posted, that's why. So I just wanted to do a get ready with me. So let me head over to the hospital. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you around the corner.